So we might as well continue with that. Here's one called It Takes One to Know One. 3 years in bed, 4 operations in 1 year. Half my chest ending up on a Dempsey dumpster, an incinerator, or on a garbage dump. Food for seagulls and rats. Endless, torturous, godless nights, and interminable, painful, fatherless days. Where were you, Pop? Sliding off a bar stool and pissing in your pants? Or passed out in the cellar, fetally curled on a pile of coal ashes? And how far away were the garbage cans that held the remnants of life in that building, as the gulls and rats held the remnants of mine in savage beaks and yellow teeth? Every 3 weeks, another operation, another 3 ribs removed. More of the breath of life collapsed and squeezed into submission. Every 3 fucking weeks, another trip on that gurney, lying in bed in the morning, listening to it come down the hall, out of sight but recognized by the flapping wheel. Every 3 weeks, I'd climb on that fucking thing. Then, hours later, be carefully lifted off and placed on a bed and hooked up to pumps, hoses, and tubes. Every 3 fucking weeks. Afraid of the sudden darkness as I'm fitted for a mask, counting back from 99 as pentothal is slowly injected. A frightened 18-year-old kid, more afraid of admitting and showing his fear than he was of that darkness. Every 3 weeks I'd come to in the recovery room, and Mom would be there, wiping my head, rubbing my lips with an ice cube, smiling, reassuring, saying something, and she was always alone. Did she conceive me by herself? Am I the product of an immaculate conception? Am I a new Messiah here to talk about the Father's love and then be crucified on the cross of your indifference? Jesus Christ, Pop, where the fuck were you? Every 3 weeks, Pop. Every 3 weeks until they collapsed one side and then they cut on the other. Christ, I hungered for you, Pop, as much as I struggled to breathe. They were cutting the breath of life out of me to keep me alive, and you seemed to be denying me the reason to take the next breath. Every 3 weeks I'd come to and reach out to you, but couldn't find your hand. I loved you, Pop. I admired, respected, hated, resented, and feared you, but I loved you. Couldn't you simply make the trip of a few miles? Or is the trip from the bar an endless one that knows no distance but only impossibility? You wouldn't have had to say anything, not even laugh your nervous laugh. Just sit for a minute and perhaps touch me. You broke my heart, Pop. I thought you were a man among men, but you broke my heart. I didn't know then that you felt so guilty about my dying that you felt like a murderer. So how could you come and watch your only child, your son, waste away to airless nothingness, when in your heart of hearts and your tortured mind, all you heard over and over was murderer, murderer? I survived the loss of ribs and lungs, what they call vital capacity, and I survived the greater loss in my heart. I left the hospital and roamed the streets, passing out in doorways and snowbanks, dragged home by friends in drunken stupors. And you talked to me, finally. You told me I was worrying my mother because of my drinking. I fucking near shit. My drinking. I looked at you silently, hung my head in the proper contrite fashion, sneering at you while looking at the tips of my shoes. You cleared your throat a few times and left for the bar. In due time, so did I. I wandered, wondered, drank, brooded, and in time dragged a booze-loaded body up the hill that overlooks the harbor. And my mind had a strange and unknown sense of clarity. And somewhere within me I cried. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but the cry of anguish was deep within me. And I cried out to something to help me find my father. Cried out to something